Hey everyone, welcome back to the Drafted Pages podcast. Rolling right into another episode of the CG series. This time I got my boy Walker with me tonight. How you doing, man?
Doing well. And yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. We're coming off a 3-day holiday weekend at the time of this recording, so got to have an extra day of rest this past week.
Maybe you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of us still worked, but
Yeah, well, work or playing Farming Simulator, which
a little bit of both.
a little bit of both.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can multitask.
Yeah, love it. So rolling right into, another episode with this. It's been really fun so far getting everybody on, and happy you committed to go through this process with me and talk a little bit about your life and your story and wherever else this might go.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's cool that as a community group that we'll be able to look back at it, but also, just to do something else together.
Yeah. Yeah, like we've said in every episode so far, we got to get one with all the boys on it. That would be a ton of fun.
Have you gotten Jacob to commit?
Jacob has not committed at the time of this recording. So, Jacob, if you're listening to this episode,
You need to join in.
join it. You're the next one on the list. So yeah, let's get into it. I got a fun little icebreaker for you.
Oh gosh.
So you've for the whole time I've known you through our CG, seemed like a well-versed guy in terms of the word and have explored the Bible a good amount. Would you say that's fair?
Sometimes.
Okay.
When I need it, yeah.
Okay. So, if you were to create a Mount Rushmore of biblical characters, besides Jesus, because obviously he would be on there for everybody,
Right.
besides Jesus, who would be the four you would put on that Mount Rushmore?
I think you have to go with Paul for sure. Probably John the Baptist. Let's see. I think Jesus' mom, Mary.
Ooh,
Yeah. I
okay.
think you need to add her in there. Gosh, for a fourth though. I think someone like Moses. I think we saw the most emotion from him.
Yeah.
And so it'd be an interesting thing to see someone show a little bit more emotion, right? Yeah. So that'd be my four.
That's a good four. Jesus' mother Mary
Yeah.
is a character I never. Not that I didn't think about putting her on the Mount Rushmore list, but I think that's a great choice. But just one that I haven't even thought of in that way. Like I think that's what made you go that route. What made you think to add her?
I think in some ways it ties back to like my mom and just kind of this strength and resilience I saw from her. And then on the other side, just the perspective of getting to watch Christ grow up. It just brings an amount of, I guess, some ways peace, but also stress from a mother's point of view, and yeah, I'd be curious to see her insight in her eyes through things.
Yeah, that's good, dude. I think you said that really well. I think you may have convinced me to put Mary, Mother of Jesus, on my Mount Rushmore. Yeah.
Just might.
Yeah. Cool. No, I thought it'd be a cool little icebreaker. I heard somebody say it a long time ago, and I'm like, man, that's a good exercise. Who would you pick? Because it's hard. There's so many key characters in the Bible and people that we always remember their stories, and it's like, okay, but which of the four are you really putting on there in terms of their impact? So yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. So segueing, like I've done with all the boys so far, getting into more of the deeper conversation right off the bat. Going into your testimony.
Okay.
Would love for you to share whatever you're comfortable with and as detailed as you want to be. Kind of, if you could touch on, what made you choose Christ, choose to follow God, give up your life, kind of where was that moment? And then what life has been like since you made that decision. I think are just two key points to touch on. But you can go as far back and as far detailed as you want to be, man. The floor is yours.
Well, I think it's kind of breaks it up in two different points of accepting Christ, right? Because I think growing up in a traditional Christian family, I think it was easy almost to accept him. It was a part of our language, a part of our lifestyle, and in hearing what he did for us, and then what he was willing to do each day, made it simple in that way. It's like, yes, I want that love, I want that acceptance and forgiveness, um, and so I think from that point, it seemed light and it seemed um, freeing. But I think as I got into to high school and into sports in a more competitive way, and as you know, when it comes with that territory, not always the it's not always at the forefront of everyone's mind or yourself. And so I think in that is probably I lost the value in it from my eyes. And so I think through high school it was rough. That's when started with relationships with girls, whether it was hiding from my parents about it because they didn't either like the girl or they just didn't want me to jump into a relationship yet. And then that kind of followed into college as well. Went to a Christian university. Was excited to play for a Christian coach. Um, I think once I got there, though, there was a little bit of a recruiting coach versus the actual head coach, and so that really frustrated me and kind of deterred me from pursuing Christ. And so college was a mess. There was, I mean, inappropriate relationships. There was substance abuse, and it was just kind of a spiraling thing for me. It was, kind of every 2 weeks there's an emotional high and then an emotional low. Um, and so in that, ended up tearing my ACL, and yeah, that was not fun trying to figure that out from the school side with the insurance and everything, and then getting back to the sport wasn't easy.
What sport?
Soccer, yeah, the
So,
dramatic one.
but an important one for your knees and
Yes,
in that way. So
very much so.
long recovery with the ACL tear.
Yeah, I think it was 13 months before I could really do any kind of physical things again, and then probably 17 months before I actually was playing soccer again. So got to that point, probably was a month into training again, and it was just not what I wanted, where I wanted to be, not what I wanted to pursue, and so kind of pursued the relationship that I was in, and that was just it was not what God wanted me to do. It was turmoil and stress and drama week after week after week. And so it just kind of made a way for it to go away, and it did very suddenly, and kind of put me at rock bottom just because of where I was in life, and kind of to build up from there. And so kind of told God, if you'll take away the pain, you'll take away the all these in our eyes negative emotions, then I'm not going to do that again. And so he started to ease me back into life, but I don't know. I don't think I was fully in yet. I'd kind of done that over and over through my life. God, just get me through this, and then I'm yours again. Um, and so I was probably halfway in at this point. So yeah, I guess just kind of started going through life after college. It's an interesting place to be. A lot of free time, and I mean, if you're working an 8 to 5, then you're done at 5. There's no stress or worry about did you do this or did you do that. And so just kind of found some friends outside of church that weren't pursuing church, and um, we weren't necessarily doing anything bad or harmful to ourselves or each other, but just weren't doing anything that was honoring Christ and being disciplined, And so, yeah, just kind of kept feeling empty. I was like, what is it? Maybe it's because I'm not doing anything competitive again. Maybe I'm missing something because I'm not in a relationship. But slowly through that, got into a relationship with Hannah, and we both kind of, on paper, we were where we should be as far as everyone else looking in, but just kind of weren't. Just going through the motions. Sometimes we're at church, sometimes weren't. But again, back in the substances and allowing the relationship to go towards an inappropriate direction, and not honoring Christ in that. And so I think with it, we both kind of felt like, oh, well, this is better than what we've been in the past, and so we're doing okay. But God really laid the guilt on me, and that wasn't fun to deal with. I tried to ignore it for a while, and I think we made it about 13 or 14 months, and then I just couldn't take it, and a couple of things happened, and then we split ways. And so both, I think, for a time tried to honor Christ in our singleness, but I don't think we did it in the way that God would that God would want us to. And so it was kind of bumpy at first, and then I think it was about a year afterwards, and we both dated other people. And then I think she reached out to me, and then I'll stay with that story. So it makes me look a little bit better, right? But I think she reached out, and I was in Canada for work, and so we FaceTimed that night and just kind of caught up with life and stuff. Had really become best friends the first time around, and so it was definitely hard in that year apart. But yeah, it was weird because neither one of us expected any kind of friendship or anything to come out of it. And then we started talking about, what went wrong, how our lives are different this time, and that kind of led towards, yeah, let's look at this again, but through God's eyes. And so I remember I was praying and just asked Christ, if this is meant to be for my story, then let it be easy, let it be simple in the ways that it should be. And so in that, with me wanting to know everything all the time, which is something we pray about often, but it just kind of led to a conversation. Let's break down everything that we need to be doing and what we're not, and see if this can work. And we did, and that was for about a year maybe, and then I proposed, and so now we're 2 months into engagement.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, that is such a exciting and fulfilling story and testimony there. Like, not only did God work his way back into your life to like have the front and center stage, but he also like he healed you through that time and like healed your relationship with Hannah to the point where like you guys are engaged now,
Right.
and planning for marriage. And like we have very similar stories in that way with our ladies.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to like be able to relate to you and just hear from another person's perspective like how God can work and perform miracles, really. Yeah. So before we get into the engagement, because I do want to talk a lot about that.
For sure.
I think there's some good stuff in there to get your perspective on and see how you've handled that. But wanted to come back to the part you were talking about with sports. And I think that it can be really common, especially for us men, to almost idolize our sport and make it our life. And so would love to kind of hear how that process was when you decided to like walk away from the game and what that void left for you and how God kind of like worked his way into that space. And maybe even too you could touch on like if there's any like athletes out there in high school or college like that are making their sport their life, like how can we stop idolizing it as much and glorify God through it?
Yeah, no, it was definitely tough uh, to make the decision, but going back into it, you really don't realize, it starts from the beginning and what precedent or priority you set for it. And so, I think with my parents, they wanted to love on me, they wanted to support me, and if I was capable and if I was willing, then they were going to give their time as well. And so, if you go back to high school, it was whether it was regional tournaments or out of town or out of state games. There's travel time involved, and so um, church wasn't, at least attending church wasn't as important. And so we've kind of talked about that now, that we have a friendship, not so much of a parent and son relationship, and just something that I would want to do differently. Now, my competitive nature is like, I don't want them to miss any game. If they're able to do that. But yeah, I think getting into that decision then of, hey, I think I'm gonna walk away was, it seemed simple at the moment, because it was like, okay, so soccer in the States is not where it needs to be for this to be a career, nor was I probably where I needed to be for me to be competitive at that level. And so I think kind of scratched those off the list as far as emotional or hard decisions. It was okay, well, we've got a year and a half left of college. What's next? And so school was on my mind, thankfully. and But yeah, so I think I was good for about a week, and then it hit me, and I was like, I'm not a soccer player anymore. What do I do? What is my personality now? And so, um, I think it kind of comes back though is, when we talk about idols in our lives now, when we kind of walk through our sin struggles, or the things that pull us from Christ, and it can be anything. And so for me, it was sports, and so if we can place the things in our lives that are meant for our enjoyment, or meant for potential success, we have to place them in the right spot. And so if the lens isn't that Christ is allowing us to do this, and Christ is helping us in that, then we'll lose sight, and you'll end up in a situation like myself. Um, yeah,
Dude, perfect. Yeah, that's so well said. Like anything can be an idol. It doesn't have to be just sports.
it's always the dumbest things too. Now that we're out of college and everything.
Yeah, it can be so easy to fall into that trap and just replace one thing with another, or like a sin struggle that you mentioned. You uproot one thing, and you just end up replacing it with something else.
Right.
It can be a common theme. So definitely catching yourself in those moments and preparing and trying to fill those voids or those idolizations with the Lord and spiritual disciplines is going to help you along the way. So
Mm-hmm. For sure.
you touched on, you mentioned briefly working in Canada, and I know you've kind of worked all over. You worked in Canada for over a year, right?
Just about. So yeah,
Yeah.
we had a project that we were rolling out up there.
Okay.
So
So Canada, and I know you've worked a lot all over Texas as well. What what has kind of been, and this can be faith or not non-faith related. Like what has been, because that's something at your your age that not a lot of people go through or try. Even like that's scary. Like it's not even like you were living in a state next door to
right.
where you grew up. Like you're in a whole different country.
Yeah.
Granted, it's Canada, so it's different than like Brazil, but still, nonetheless, it's a different country. So, what would you say is one of like the hardest things about working in so many different locations, and what would be one of like the more fulfilling things in those opportunities?
Well, I think it most definitely comes down to isolation. You know, when you're I was in the States probably 40 to 48 hours a week. So just long enough to take a nap, you know, wash my clothes and then drive back to the airport. And then the rest of the time it's in a hotel or at whatever location that you're in. And so you miss out on church depending on the schedule. You miss out on the the in-person interaction that God intended for us. You know, um, we wouldn't have a physical church if that were the case. You know, um, and so yeah, I think that was the biggest thing was realizing you get very used to being in silence, which can be nice, right? You can enjoy almost anywhere, but um, not good for our soul, not good for our heart over extended amounts of time. I think the cool thing though is being in different places. You know, I think I was at the most northern point. I was probably 14 or 1500 miles north of where we are now. Yeah,
That's far
in cold.
and cold.
Yeah, so tonight doesn't seem too bad for me.
Tonight you're like, oh, this is like shorts weather almost.
Yes.
For those that don't know, it's like less than 20 degrees out right now in Texas
Yeah.
with wind. The big cold front coming in.
The
But
wind makes it worse.
yeah, big time. But continue.
Yeah. I think just being able to see new places. Got to see Vancouver in I think middle of spring, so it was beautiful, and then saw it in 18 inches of snow, and so just totally different city with both of those environments, but it was pretty. And then even driving through South Texas and doing that, yeah, it's cool to see new places, right? And it's nice when you're visiting. I think it's most places you're good for 4 or 5 days, and then you're ready to go back home. And yeah, that's kind of how it was for me. Got to see a lot of things. Got to eat a lot of good food. But yeah.
I think the food is some of the best parts about traveling.
Oh,
If you
yeah.
if you like to travel, right?
Yes.
You're gonna go to places where you want to try the new food,
Mm-hmm.
or at least expect some good different cuisine than what you're used to.
Yeah,
There.
for sure.
What's your favorite airline?
American Airlines, for
Okay.
sure. Yeah.
Are you loyal to it? Like
I
do or
am.
die? Like everything is going American, or are you just
If
choosing the best
I
flight and hope that American is kind of within the price point?
no, it's American, and if I can get it, then yes, that's what I'm using. So there were some cases where I didn't, and it was rough. But yeah, so not too bad, and not too picky on it, but always gonna choose them over any of the rest.
It's a free sponsorship there for American.
Yeah,
They wanna sponsor the pod. We're
would be
more
nice.
than welcome to host them and give them a shout out every podcast. But, other question follow up to that is: are you an aisle or a middle seat guy,
aisle.
or
Well-
not middle, window? Who chooses the middle seat? Aisle
Yeah,
or window?
no. It would have to go window, aisle, then middle.
Do you
Yeah.
like to like lean your head up against it, or
I'm falling asleep, so it's nice to have that, but I'm asleep before they get through the safety briefing, so I'm not too sure where my head ends up. So
so? Do you at least know where your exits are, or you're just like, I'm going to sleep, and if this goes down, I'm kind of on my own.
I know where I'm going.
All right.
So,
I think you can tell more about a person from where they sit on a plane than you can just a normal elevator conversation.
how so?
I think because you said aisle or you said window, right? Like
Right.
I know you probably have a pretty decent bladder because you're not going to have to get up and go 8
Right.
times during a flight. You probably like the isolation or the comfort side of just having the window. And being able to like lean up against it and not have to worry about people coming in and out of your row and getting up and down. You probably like to be a little bit more in control of things, and you touched on that in the beginning, right? You can control the light that's coming into your area. With that, definitely easier on the Windows side, and yeah,
Nobody should have that window open.
yeah. Oh, I agree.
It's we're at the point that planes have been around long enough that you've seen everything, and it looks all the same from 30,000 feet up.
Yeah, you're really not seeing much else from place to place. Like, I get it if you want to see it take off and land. Like, I understand, especially if you're first time flying. Like, that's a cool part. But yeah, I agree. Like, when we're in the air, just shut the window. Like, sun out or sun down, just keep it shut. We don't need that. So cool. Got to know a lot more about you
Yeah.
in those couple of questions. Wanted to get back to the engagement and you
Okay.
and Hannah. Recently engaged, cause a couple of weeks, right? Do you know?
Oh gosh, no.
Testing him.
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Okay.
Yeah, almost 2 months.
So almost 2 months. Wedding is coming up soon, right?
Yeah, so April 6th. So,
Yeah.
what, another 6 weeks?
Yeah. So it's gonna be here so soon, dude.
Yeah.
So soon. So happy for you guys, and like you touched on with your story, like it's amazing to see how God's working as you as an individual, and then through you guys' relationship too. Like it's so awesome to hear stories like that. But I wanted to touch on kind of your guys' process through this. You guys are very similar to Jocelyn and I. You know, dated before, BC way, then come back together, do it the godly way, all that jazz. But like the short engagement part of it, I feel like a lot of people are kind of almost planning the wedding before they're even engaged.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of like was the thought process behind that? Is it just like a timing thing? Is it a like, hey, we've dated for how many years of our lives now? Like we really don't need that long of an engagement. Like kind of just like educate me a little bit on your decisions and
I think it was a little bit of all of them. I think timing was coming into play as far as both of our leases were coming up. And when she kind of mentioned that, she was like, "Hey, like it'd be great, if I didn't have to sign a 6 month lease or go month to month." And I immediately shot that down. I was like, "There's no way we're doing that. I'm not getting married off of logistics." um, and then just kind of kept thinking about it, and we went ring shopping just so she could figure out what she wanted, because she was all over the place.
Yep.
And that was awesome in that moment, just to get to her see her just light up and see these different types and shapes, and figure out what she truly wanted. And so as I got closer to proposing, um, I don't know, I felt peace about it, and I was like, okay, so while I don't want to make it off of timelines for when we're moving or what we would have to do for leases, it while it's not the main reason, but it definitely helps. And so I told her one day, and I was like, yeah, I'm okay with that now. She's like, okay, well, you have to propose, and I need to start planning now, because we were probably it's probably the first week of December that I kind of came to a peaceful mindset on that. And so we probably kind of started to roughly plan for the first 3 or 4 weeks, and then I proposed. And so, yeah, I think part of the short engagement also came from, yeah, like you said, we've dated in the past, and we've dated in a way that didn't honor God, and so that temptation is always there. Um, and so when you are best friends and you want to spend a lot of time together, whether it's cooking or watching movies or just hanging out and being young 20-year-olds, or um, yeah, it just as as Kevin and y'all like to make fun of me, I will talk about my bumpers till I'm blue in the face, and so it's um, let's put some of those on to help us. And I think one of those ways was, hey, let's have a short engagement. Yeah, we could have a decent amount of time to enjoy it, and kind of get over the glow of the ring, and also the engagement. Um, but yeah, so that kind of brings it all back to where we are.
Yeah, that's fantastic, dude. Like, it's such a fun time when you make that commitment, like in your hearts, even before like you do the actual proposal. When it's like, hey, like this is the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with. Like, I'm at peace with this. I've prayed about it. Feel like I've gotten confirmation from the Lord. Like, however you view that, like when you make that commitment in your heart and then go through and actually propose, and she says yes, right? Like, it's just such a fun time to be because it's just like pure excitement
Right.
and bliss and everything. But for a lot of people, and maybe you experience this too, it can also be a little bit nerve wracking. The idea of spending the rest of your life with one person, or especially someone you've had history with. Like, all right, are we truly different this time around? Like, is this the person I'm going to spend the rest of my life with? Like, there's so many other options out there in the world, you know? Like, can you kind of talk me through what it was like for you to make that decision and kind of like how you approached that decision and maybe some things that you asked yourself when deciding like, yeah, Hannah's the girl I want to make my wife.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, like you said, is you answer those fearful questions first. Of is there's so many other options out there, and I think that comes from either us dating over and over again, right, and not putting the the lens on of I'm dating to marry, or meaning it when we say it, right? Um, and so in some ways, yeah, that's where that fear can come. And so when you start to address each one of those at their root, then you can see where the struggles, or the where the fear is really coming from. And so for me, having um, the center of the struggle to want to know everything, definitely made it difficult. Like you said, those three questions of, are things different? Is this the right person? Am I am I different as well, that this will work? Because it's a two-way street, right? And so when when I started praying about it, it was, at first it was, you know, make this the one, because I don't want to go through this again. I'm out of college. Things are very different now as far as who we can meet or who we don't, and organically it just doesn't happen as easily. And so there was some fear there, but um, through meeting with my mentor, and then um, just talking with you guys, as well as other friends from college that are still pursuing Christ, it just kind of became clear to me that maybe I wasn't praying in the way that would honor Christ. And so it had to be a switch there, and a heart posture change of, hey, is this your will? And if so, let's look at the details of what we know, and then trust you that you're either going to take this away from me like you have each and every time prior, or it's going to happen. And so it wasn't immediate, which was frustrating and still fearful, but persisting in that, and allowing him to work through each one. And it would just kind of happen each time. It's like, oh wait, that's a question or a fear that I had, and it just, now it's not, because of this little moment or this little action. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of what led me to then asking. There was fear of, am I gonna get it right, as far as, okay, am I gonna get down on a knee right? Am I gonna be hunched over, or am I gonna say the things that I wanted to say to her? Um, but the fear of her answer was not there, because either it was gonna be a no, and that's what Christ wants, because I wouldn't want her to feel obligated to say yes, or it was going to be a yes, and we get to pursue the next step that God created for us. So
Yeah, that's good, dude. I think there you said a lot of good nuggets in there for anybody who's walking through that in a relationship or maybe even single and wants to get married and things you have to ask yourself and prepare for going through that process. So you got all the confirmations, all the green lights across the board. It's time to propose. You've proposed. You've been engaged 6 weeks now. What does it looked like for you in preparing for marriage? That next step, like how have you been preparing your home or your heart, your mind, your finances, like anything you want to talk about in just preparing for being married and the next step for your relationship.
yeah, well, I think to start, it's a roller coaster. You know, it one moment you're the stereotypical fiance and you have no idea what's going on, and then the next moment there's a crisis and it's world stopping, uh, at least to the people involved, right? And you either have to go into helper mode or you have to go into consoling, right? And so it's hard to figure out which is which in the moment and what they need or what is most helpful to them. Um, and so that that's been fun to get to figure out, because there will be other moments in life moving forward that'll be the same way, as we make bigger and bigger decisions. Um, and then I think from the apartment side is, yeah, so I was able to find a 2 bedroom so that I didn't have an office in my bedroom.
Like I have, yeah.
Yeah. Which, if you can make it work, it's great. You're able to save money on that, and I think for Hannah and I, because she's off on a Monday and a Tuesday, and not your typical weekend. She would come over and help me with chores, whether it was cleaning or laundry, and just being helpful so that I could be lazy when
Life
I was.
material right there. Yes.
Yes, very much so. Um, and so we realized very quickly that um, I didn't want her to have to tiptoe around as I'm on calls, or if I have to have my camera on for a call, then that cuts off 90% of the apartment. Um, and so that was the first big step, is okay, can we find space within our budget moving forward that allowed us to still save towards a house. And so, yeah, got that settled, and it's so big. I don't know what to do with any of the wall space.
Have you asked her? Does she have? Is she thinking about the design and everything for when you guys are married, or is it just kind of gonna be once we're married we'll figure it out?
It's a little bit of both. Um, I've got, thankfully, she said the office or second bedroom is where I can kind of make my own decisions without any oversight.
It's really nice to have.
Yes. So I have LED lights that I like that she thinks are not the best to look at, but it creates the vibes or the mood that I would like, and so it's fun to get to do that. As far as the rest, it's kind of a weird limbo of both figuring out what we want to bring and what we want to trash, and then looking for things to add to the space, but then maybe waiting, right? It's like, hey, we want to save some money prior to getting married, so then when it comes to a honeymoon or any other emergency funds that we might need, that they're then available. Because a new TV is not going to be helpful if something goes wrong with the car or um, any other imaginable issues that could come up. So it's interesting to navigate it, but it's been fun to have someone that you check in about with decisions. It hasn't felt controlling or I guess maybe like you're below them, right? Where you have to ask for permission or anything. Those are definitely ways to look at it, but I think both of us in our discussions to make sure that we're not coming across that way. It's been nice.
Yeah, you guys are running at this together
Yes.
as one, as like we're told to do, as we're instructed to do and learn to do. So that's great that you guys are already doing that. Like I think that's such an important part of marriage. And you went through merge. You and Hannah went through merge. Joss and I went through merge. Like something they talk about a lot is like being unified together as one. I'm sure you've heard that from other mentors and family and stuff. Like in marriage, like you now operate as one.
Right.
It's no longer myself, her. It's together. So yeah, that's great. It's nice to have somebody in your corner, like you said, to help you with those decisions too, especially the decor of the apartment.
Yeah, it matters.
It does. It does. So yeah, so we're engaged. We're getting ready for marriage. Planning the wedding can be very stressful. A lot of things you got to decide on. A lot of money you're spending on it too. What has been maybe like the hardest part about that, and what is something like, well, I've done this now. I wish I knew something else beforehand.
I think for us is we were or we are using a lot of our own funds, and then there have been some family that have to reach out to help, and I think like we've all heard is you don't loan money or don't borrow money or don't go into business with family. It can be tricky, right? And so I think Christ laid out a lot of good ideas or principles for us to use, though. And so um, I think in one of our first transactions, we both parties weren't upfront, at least, about their expectations behind those things. And so it led to some very hard discussions where emotions were involved and feelings were hurt. And so that was one of the things. It's like, okay, so the next time this comes around, is like we're not doing it that way. Here are our terms and agreements. And um, not to make it in a business way, but to define um, what we're receiving or what the expectation is behind anything. And especially as you're going into marriage and stuff, you kind of want to operate on your own as much as possible. And so to then look at anything that you're given as a gift and to make sure that it's also being given as a gift is probably the biggest thing that's would be helpful for us and for anybody else moving forward.
Yeah, like you said before, like operating as one and walking through that, and learning your lessons along the way, making sure that doesn't happen again, or just like being better prepared. Yeah, I think that's all super helpful. Are you getting your own suit? Are you renting, or you have bridal party?
So I went through the rental way just because I wanted to be considerate of everyone else in the party. Of like, we don't all need to go buy $600, $700, $800 suits or more for something that we probably won't wear again. We might piece it here and there with other things, but it's um, didn't seem to be as significant as her dress, right? And so went the rental route, in which just allows us all to look the same as well, and which is something I wanted. So it's been easy in that, is because then we can all go get our sizes, and then it can be shipped to us. We can wear it for our 6-8 hours, whatever it may be, and then we can ship it back. So that's nice in that way. I think Hannah kind of gave the bridesmaids a bunch or theme colors essentially that kind of mirrored what the colors of the wedding were going to be.
What colors is it going to be?
I have no idea. There's a
No
there's
way.
there's a version of a blue, but it's not a blue. I think there's some like olive or sage colored green in there. There might be some red or an orange, but very very earthy tones is probably what I can remember, but I can't tell you what colors they are.
It's such a guy response.
Yeah,
I would probably have the same one.
I
Too,
can
though.
see the the color palettes in our notes that we
Mhm.
shared, but and there's a name on each one of them too.
Of course
And
there is.
yeah, but no idea.
I, I can relate. Yeah, I remember when Jocelyn was picking out like the flower colors and things. She was like, "Yeah, I want like this like light blue and like this green and maybe some pink in there." And I
Right.
was just kind of like, "Hey, I have no idea. Like,
Right.
you pick, you roll with it.
Yeah.
You run this part of the show."
Oh, and then like the reception color of the dishes, and I was like, why can't they be white? You know?
Just make it
And
simple.
yeah, no, or the silverware or any of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's it's cool to see someone care about all those things,
Mm.
um, in that way, and for them to want it to look nice, right? Is kind of the take I've had to pursue, because coming across of, "Well, I don't care, so that's stupid," is not what they want to hear, nor is it the right answer, as Hannah would say. She would say, "No, pick a different answer because that's not the one I want." Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's a refreshing way to look at it. It's like she cares about this a lot and is putting a lot of effort into it. So me as also being a partner in this relationship should also put the same amount of care and effort
right.
in to support at the very least, right? So yeah, that's great advice. It's good stuff.
Not saying I use it all the time, but
Yeah.
that's 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 the attempt.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's the heart posture
Right.
like we talk about with everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. Just checking the time here. We got about 10, 15 minutes or so.
Okay.
I always leave time at the end. We're a little early on it, but sometimes the dialogue can go long, as you saw with Kevin. We got into some questions there. But just if you came armed with anything, if there's any topics, faith, non-faith, whatever it could be, you wanted to bring up and discuss or just have a chat about.
I think one of the big things is like for both of us playing sports at the level that we did. Um, how do you envision parenting your kid going forward, right? Because I think we both had parents that supported us in that, and whether it was the monetary commitment or the time commitment, both being huge in every way. So, are there things that you would do differently, or would you even put your kid in sports because of your own competitive nature, and most likely your kid's competitive nature as well?
Yeah, those are great questions. Well, I feel like we could do a whole episode on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, probably.
But to give the Spark Notes version of it, yes, I would definitely want them to do sports. I'm not going to force it upon them, but any sort of extracurricular activity, especially something that can drive competitiveness, has a team aspect of it, teaches you discipline. I think there's just so much you get out of playing sports, especially at a young age, that really helps like grow you that other things can't. And prepares you and almost puts you like steps and leagues ahead of people that don't do that stuff when it gets to like the real world and working jobs and things like that. So sports, yes. Things I would do differently or things I would keep the same. I mean, you talked about the monetary and the time commitment from parents. Like to this day, I don't know how my parents did it. Like I do not know how they got me to every practice, to every game, paid for me to travel and do all that stuff at such a high level. Like it blows my mind. And like they still work jobs and did laundry and cooked dinner and it's like I think about that now with Jocelyn and I, and like we don't even have kids, and I'm like sometimes we struggle to keep up with some of that stuff during a week. Like I can't imagine having a baby or like multiple kids and like doing their extracurricular activities. So I think that'll be a challenge. That'll be interesting to run it by. But yeah, I just always felt loved and supported in what I wanted to do. I never felt like I was forced to do it. So that's definitely something I'd want to keep and try and implement with my kids with whatever that hobby is. Just to know that like, hey, like you don't have to do this. Like, I think you're good at it. I think you could have a lot of fun and success with this. Like, I'll push them in that way. But like, at the end of the day, if you don't want to work at it, I'm not going to force you to do it because that's how you just create animosity.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
definitely had that conversation a few times.
yeah. Yeah.
Looks like you didn't want to play.
Yeah. Well, I didn't, Dad. All right. I didn't want to play today. Just wanted to sit at home and do nothing. Right.
Right. Yep.
But that comes with discipline, right? And it's not,
Mhm.
especially team sports. Like everyone else is relying on you. Like
Right.
you got.
It's a job.
Yeah, it's the same thing that comes to the real world. Like you got a team
Yeah.
that's relying on you. You can't just phone it in
Mhm.
because you're gonna let other people down. So that I would encourage with my kids, and things I would do differently. I don't know if there's really anything because, like I said, I just felt so loved and supported from it. Maybe like trying to focus on more the intangibles in sports, like the mental side. I think became super important because I mean baseball, you hear it's 90% mental, and I think focusing on that more would have made me possibly a better player, and also maybe taught me a little bit more at a younger age, also how to be a better man in that way. So knowing what I know now, I'm not blaming my parents for that because I feel like I got introduced to that at the right time. But yeah, like making sure that that's a focal point of it. It's not just like the hard skills; it's like the mental side of it that
Right.
comes with it.
Most definitely.
I would say. What about you? Is there anything from your side?
I think it would, it kind of comes down to the time commitment again. Is can we still prioritize a community of believers and do that. So I think that will be something to consider and then something to navigate because it won't be black and white. Um, but yeah, I'd most definitely want them in sports, but enjoyed my fine arts classes and stuff like that. So played the piano for maybe 11 or 12 years, and so enjoyed that. But it's just like sports, as you start, if you really want to do well or be successful, then it's just as many hours and it's just as much commitment in multiple ways. So I would say that um, while I would prefer sports, I think music and stuff like that is something that I enjoy, and so it'd be cool to see them do that as well.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the High School Musical, right? You can be talented at both,
Yes,
and then it gets hard when you get older and make the
because you
decision
have to choose.
to commit. But
Yeah.
again, that teaches you a lot as
Mm-hmm.
a kid growing up. So yeah, I think that's good stuff. Are you hard on that? Like, if you had it your way, if you your choice, like, are they playing soccer? Like, let's say they're great at everything. Like, are they playing Like, you want them to play soccer? Or you want them to play a different sport? Is there anything specific? Like, if you were to tailor make your child, like, yeah, they're gonna be the next Messi. I would love that.
um, I think that's a cool idea, right? Is to have that dream or aspiration for them to play any sport at that level. Um, I think something that it was great about my dad is he loved baseball with everything in him. And so I think I tried it, and that was something that he wanted us to. If we were gonna try something, then yeah, go ahead, but commit to what you're trying. And so in my case, I tried soccer, I tried baseball, but I tried basketball as well, but soccer was the thing that I stuck with, and so it was cool. They allowed me to try everything, with the understanding that you're gonna give it everything for the attempt, that you're making. Um, and so the same way, I would say, yes, I might try to put them in soccer first, but if they want to try something, then you can, and absolutely, but it's under the understanding that you're gonna complete whatever you're committing to. So
Yeah, that's a great mindset and philosophy. It's like what you commit to, you're completing.
hmm
I think it's so important that we instill that in our kids. God willing, we have kids.
right, yeah,
Because yeah, I think a lot of people nowadays, and especially the society we live in, me first, all that stuff. It's kind of like, "Oh, I don't really want to do it anymore. I'm just gonna give up.
yeah,
I'm gonna quit and move on to something else." And you never get anything accomplished or done because you keep switching.
right,
So
yeah,
commit to something, complete it, give it your best. That's all anyone can ask for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. Anything anything else? Last closing thoughts here?
No, I can't think of anything else.
We talked about a lot.
Yeah.
Talked about a lot of good stuff there. And yeah, I hope for everyone listening out there, you may have gotten something out of that premarital stage and what it's like to decide on choosing a wife, and then kind of what it's like once you decide to make that commitment together, like the planning and everything that goes into that. I think is all great, and a lot of stuff within your testimony there too.
Mm-hmm.
It's just awesome to see God work in your life and continue to work in your life, dude. And like, it's amazing to call you a friend and be a witness to it every week.
Likewise.
Yeah, appreciate it. So,
Yeah.
thanks for coming on again.
Of course.
This was a great talk. I had a lot of fun with this one. Hope you did too. And we'll get you on next time with all the boys.
Sounds like a plan.
Everyone that wants to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, cool. We'll wrap up there. Appreciate everybody watching, listening, and we'll see you next week.